Yeah, hi. Good morning to everyone. So let's start our session now. Okay. So I think, yeah, as part of our sessions, yesterday we started discussion about the constructors. So we tried to understand what is a constructor and how constructors are going to be implemented, as well as how constructors are going to be executed. So generally, I'll purpose we are not understood properly. I mean, purpose in the sense at what time we will write down the constructors in place of methods, because it looks like methods and it looks like whatever we are writing in the methods we can write inside the constructors, something like it is looks like. So that means what is the real difference between methods and constructor point of view? At what time we will write down the constructors? Once we taken parameterized second type of constructor also, then I will explain in the last at what scenarios generally people will write the constructors over the methods. So when it comes to the constructor point of view, so there are some rules and regulations available. What are those rules and regulations and all? We discussed yesterday's session. Okay, so the rules here it is. What are those rules and regulations and all? Give me a second. Okay, sorry. So a constructor, couple of rules we discussed. The rules are constructors are always written with the class names. In which class you are implementing the constructor. For the same class, you have to write. I mean, for the same class name, you have to use the constructors. So that is rule number one. You cannot use any name, whatever you want, irrespective of class name. So we cannot use other names. So point number two is constructors will never ever have a return value. So that means constructors don't have a concept of return type and return value. And then third one is constructors are going to take parameters. Like however, methods are going to take parameters and argument values while we are executing methods or when we are calling the methods. In similar point of view, constructors are also going to take parameters. So if zero or more parameters means we can write constructors without parameters as well as with parameters. And then constructors are defined always inside the class as well as outside of the methods. So that means constructors are a individual code blocks. You cannot write inside the methods. So these are all individual code blocks. We will write outside of the methods always. Fine. And after that, we just taken an example. I mean, syntax says when it comes to the constructor, you will always follow this syntax. So here access specifier will come, nothing but public, private, protected, something will be there. We will see what are those later. But for time being, we know we will use public straightforward. And then the real difference, what is the public, what is the private and all, we will see later. So now public followed by class name, constructor name and zero or more parameters. So this is what syntax we will follow and we will write down the constructors like this. So it looks like method only, but class name without return type. And then you'll write on the logic. So if you are having constructor parameters, yes, we will define the parameters also. And then we will discuss when at what scenarios these parameterized constructors should be defined and how these parameterized constructors are going to be executed. I'll discuss in today's session. Okay. So now the behavior point of view, this is all how we are writing the constructors. But when it comes to the execution point of view, we discussed constructors are executed always when you are creating the object. So that means whenever we are writing a logic like creating an object like this, so internally JVM is going to execute the constructors automatically. So that means as a developer, like however you are calling the methods, like externally, something like I want to, you are calling method 1, method 2, something like that specifically. With respect to constructors, you don't need to anything. So if you want to execute a constructor in the sense, you want to create an object. So that's a rule we have to remember. So that means as a vice versa, whenever you created an object like this for that class, immediately if there are any constructors written, then internally JVM will verify any constructors existed or not. If existed, then those constructors will be executed. So that means if you want to create execute constructor one more time, means you have to create one more object. So based on the number of times you created the objects, the number of times constructors will be executed. Okay, so that means like similar to methods, you cannot call constructors wherever you want, whenever you want. You can call, but in what way means you have to create the object. So if you are creating an object means it's nothing but you are calling the constructor or executing the constructor. So until and unless you are not creating the object, you cannot call the constructors. There is no way of constructor execution. So that is the things you have to remember here. It's always a relation associated with object creation versus constructor execution. Okay. So these are all details we discussed yesterday. Couple of questions also. Yeah. So there are again two types of the constructors available in Java. One is default constructor and second one is parameterized constructor. So the first one we discussed yesterday very clearly. So what is the concept of default constructor or zero parameterized constructor we discussed. So that means whenever we return a constructor without any parameters. So in this case, the parenthesis is empty parenthesis. We are not defined any parameters. So this will be called as default constructor. So whenever a constructor don't have any parameters defined, that will be called as a default constructor of the class. So no parameters, then we can call this constructor as a default constructor. And we will write some logic whatever we want to execute whenever an object is created for this class. Then that logic, what logic has to be executed, then such logic you'll write inside the constructor. Okay, so this is also we discussed yesterday, just we are revising the things now. And then my next point is, in a class how many default constructors we can create? So the answer is only one. Why? It should not be more than one, either 0 or 1. So that means as a developer, if you don't have a requirement of any constructor, you don't need to write anything. If you have a requirement of constructor, one default constructor, you can define only one constructor but not more than one. So why? The reason is ambiguity problem. So if you return assume, for example, Java is allowing more than one. So 1 and 2. Then when it comes to the execution wise, which constructor has to be executed? This one or this one? So both are having same signature. Both are having same naming convention. Both are having same name, same signature and everything. Then which one has to be executed? 1 or 2? So ambiguity. So to avoid all these problems, compiler will say like you return the duplicate constructor. Remove one of the constructors. So ultimately what is the answer for this is you have to write either 0 or 1. So that means it's not mandatory to write a constructor. In case if it is your requirement is demanding, then you can write only one constructor with respect to one default constructor, not more than one. So that is, these are all rules you have to remember, guys. Now otherwise you'll get the compile time error. Okay. Now next we discussed one more point, one more internal compilation point of view. I discussed one more point yesterday. What it is, in a class as a Java developer, if you are added any type of constructor, maybe it is a default constructor or maybe it is a parameterized constructor, whatever it is. As a developer, if you have written any constructor in our Java class, then compiler, I mean, if you are not added anything, so that means we are not written any constructor, then internally compiler will add a default constructor with empty body inside the logic. Okay, so that means this is the scenario I explained yesterday. If it comes to the A class, as a developer, we written three classes A, B, C. So inside A, we are not written any constructor, no constructor. Simply we written the methods. B, I written one default constructor. C, I written parameterized constructor. So in such case, only A class point of view, compiler, what it will do is, it will observe developer written any constructors or not. So there are no constructors. Then internally with the class name, so it will create an empty constructor and it will add it to the .class file and it is generated the .class. So the reason is why, if assume if there is no constructor available like this, and I told whenever you created an object in new followed by class name parentheses with empty parentheses values, then internally if you are not given any constructor as a developer, if you given a constructor, that will be executed. In this case, whenever you created object like this new b, constructor will execute that constructor will execute in such case. But in this case, as a developer, you are not written, but then how, which block has to be executed? That's the reason internally what Java is doing is, okay, as a developer, if you don't have a requirement, don't write anything. I will make sure adding something with empty body like that. It is just adding the empty constructor, and then whenever you're creating the object like this, internally that empty constructor will be executed. So that means in this case, compiler is taking care of that thing if you are not added anything. But by chance, anything, if you are added either parameterized or non-parameterized constructors, then compiler will not take any action. That means compiler will not add any default constructors. So at least something is presented, then compiler will not do anything. Nothing is presented, no constructor is presented in a Java class, then compiler will add a default constructor. That means without any parameters, without any body, internally it will add a empty constructor. So this is what internal details of a compilation and execution point of view we discuss at this point. So this is very important point. Please remember, I will prove that now. So I will prove this point today. Again, one more time. For every object creation, a constructor is always executed. The thumb rule is here at what? At any point of time, whenever you created an object, you need always a constructor. You need always a constructor. So that's the reason, as a developer, if you are not added any constructor, then compiler is adding into the .class file level. So that means by the time you are executing the Java program, .class file will be executed. Inside the .class, you already have a default constructor. So that constructor will be executed as per this statement. So this is what we discussed yesterday, and let's continue to the parameterized constructor. So see that what is the point of parameterized constructor? Let's understand now. Yeah, parameterized constructors. So what is the point of parameterized constructors? Let's see. Okay. Same rules applicable, guys. Whatever the rules we discussed with respect to constructor definition, same rules will be executed. A constructor, a constructor is defined with more than one parameter, one or more than one or more than one parameter are called as parameterized constructors. Are called as parameterized constructors. So this is what parameterized constructor definition. But that means if I have a class called as public class something like employee. Now inside an employee class, if I define a constructor something like public employee and then body. So this is not a parameterized constructor. This is not a parameterized constructor. Why? Zero parameters. So if I defined a constructor in the same class with the same class name, at least one parameter, something like integer, ID, whatever it is. So you know what is the concept of parameters. We discussed in the methods time. So same concept here also. So if I defined at least one parameter, then we can call those as parameterized constructor. So this will be called as a default constructor. That means zero parameter. and then below one is called as parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. So that means you're given at least one. So similarly, now the next question is when I'm asking with respect to one constructor, I mean default constructor, how many we can implement in a Java class? So I said the maximum is only one constructor you can define with respect to default constructor. But when it comes to the parameterized point of view, how many we can implement? So the same question if I am taking with respect to parameterized question constructors in a class, how many parameterized constructors I can define? So here it's simply again 0 or more than 1. 0 or more. Okay, so more than 1. Simply I can write more than 1. So what is the point of more than 1 here? It is you can define parameterized constructors more than 1. Okay, but the rule here it is when you are defining more than one rule is, so there is a concept called as overloading. So constructor overloading or there is a concept available, method overloading. At that time also I'll explain this very clearly. Right now also let's see what is the point of overloading. So as per overloading concept, constructor overloading or method overloading, in this case we are dealing with constructor, so let's say the constructor overloading. What is the point of overloading is there should be, see on high level I am explaining, not much, because the reason is I'll explain more in the method overloading point of view also. There should be a difference, in parameters section, in parameters section. So that means as part of by following the constructor overloading, that means what is the point in this case overloading point of view it is. So there should be a difference in the parameters section. So based on this, for example, assume if I take in this constructor. So this is a parameterized constructor and this is a default constructor. Okay, cool. But both belongs to the same class. Okay, both belongs to the same class called as employee. Now here 0 parameters, 1 parameter. So that means with respect to this one calling as a default, this is a parameter, that is okay. But the difference when it comes to the difference in the parameter section, here 0 parameters, here you have 1 parameter. Now similarly, I am writing one more constructor in the same class. See, whenever same class means same constructor name. Now, if I am writing here name, string name. So in this case, if you are applying this rule again, you can define more than one. Yes, I defined 1, 2, 3 constructors and one is default 0 and one is one parameter. So the point here it is, this is one parameter constructor. Please understand this one also. So second one also you written one more constructor and this is also one parameter. But these two are allowed in the employee class. But here also one parameter, here also one parameter. But when it comes to 0 parameter, we discussed a rule like you cannot define more than one. When it comes to 0, yes, that's true. And we saw compile time error also. In this case also, you can define more than one constructor in a class with respect to parameterized, but you have to make sure there is a difference in the parameters section. What is the difference is, if you observe here, number of parameters is one only, but the data type is, there is a difference between parameter section. So that means in this constructor point of view, it is integer. In this constructor point of view, it is string. Now, for example, see here, assume I am adding one more constructor, employee, and followed by integer, okay, and followed by um, something what I can take, pin code, whatever it is. Now, in this case, you are not satisfying this rule. So what is that overloading rule? There should be a difference in the parameter section. So based on that, if you are observing these four constructors, 0, yes, 1, so definitely there is a difference. So in this 2 point of view, it is valid one. Now when it comes to third one also, comparing with first one, there is a difference. Comparing with second one, there is a difference. Okay, fine. And like that, it will compare. So that means this is also good. Now when it comes to fourth one, it is checking. Comparing with first one, good. Comparing with second one, what is the problem? Exactly same. So leave about the argument name. Leave about the argument name. And we even in methods also we had discussed that. The, the power here comes under data type. So it's all matter of the data type. So the data type, don't say, sir, this is constructor, argument name is ID, here argument name is pin code. So there is a difference. No, it's with respect to difference in the sense data types. I'll correct that point also. So only data type it will consider in this case. So with respect to data types point of view, integer as well as integer. And how many parameters available? One parameter available, one parameter available. So that means then compiler is understanding internally duplicate constructor. So whatever you written here, both are same constructor, duplicate constructor. Then you will get a compile time error like you written duplicate constructors, please remove one of them. So like that, you will compiler is going to give the error. So in this case, what is the point you have to understand here? It is as part of the constructor, you can define many number of parameterized constructors, but you have to make sure there should be a difference between in parameter section with respect to data types, especially data types. With respect to number of parameters, if number of parameters and including data types also. Data types of arguments or parameter, data types of parameters. So here the parameters comes under the picture. So this is how you can write any number of constructors in a Java class. Now for example, if I given here long some reason, okay, and I be given mobile, whatever it is. Now in this case, yes, 0, 1, there is a difference. First of all, here it is 0 parameters, here it is 1. So in this case, one parameter, but data type is different. Now in this case, yes, one parameter only, but when comparing with one parameter this constructors, this is integer, this is string, this is long. So like that, if you are making a difference with respect to number of parameters and data types of parameters with respect to this, then you can write more than one constructor in a Java class. More than one constructor in a Java class. So whether it is true or not, see. Now this is all one parameterized constructor. For example, assume I'm writing like this: public employee, I'm writing integer ID comma name, sorry, string name, and then followed by double salary. So in this case also parameterized constructor. How many parameters? Three parameters are there. So in this case, total three parameters are there. Parameters are there. So this is a three parameterized constructor. So inside this, you will write down the logic. So similarly, all other constructors also. So compiler will verify always signature, not the logic. Okay, signatures, it will always concentrate on the signatures, not the logic. Even similar rule applicable for methods also. So tomorrow there is a concept comes method overloading. Then also you have to apply same rule with respect to method. So only same exact rule. So by the time I will not, you have to remember these points. So if you add it tomorrow in a class, you can write more than one add method, something like that. But you have to make sure some difference in the number of parameters and data types of the parameter, that is called as method overloading. So that you will understand as part of the polymorphism, we will see that. Okay, so this is how you have to implement the parameterized constructors, the rules point of view. Now let's come to the execution point of view, and what are the challenges, what are the things you have to take care as part of the implementation we discussed. Now we are discussing about the execution point of view. So when generally constructor will be executed? When created the object. When we create object, then constructor will execute. When we create object, then constructors are executed. Then only then constructors executed. So this is the thumb rule, we know that. Now let's see how to define the constructors and how to execute the constructors of with parameters. Okay, so yesterday we just discussed about default. Let me take one more Java class now. I'm taking employee class only. Okay, fine. Okay, if you see here now, first I will write default constructor. Yes, I can write in a class at a time default as well as parameterized constructor. Default constructor. So I can write only one default constructor at a time. That means 0 parameters. So here write public class name employee. So sys out of this is default constructor. Okay, fine. So like that you can write whatever the logic you want inside this block. You can write any number of lines. Okay, fine. Now can I define more than one means? I can define, but I said there should be a difference in the parameter section. So that's the reason also yesterday I said you can define only one default constructor but not more than one. So with 0 parameters you cannot define one more because you're already implemented. Okay, fine. So now I return something like integer id. Integer id. So this is one param constructor. See, now the error is gone. So that means 0 parameters, 1 parameter. So one parameterized constructor with id, and then I'm just making id value here. So whatever id comes here, I just attach it to here so that it will be printed. Now see here, when it comes to the execution perspective, sorry, whenever this, sorry. Yeah. 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 So whenever we discussed yesterday default constructor, how it will be executed whenever we created the object. So let me write the main method. Okay, so in this case, when default constructor executed in the sense, yesterday I said whenever you created object like this. So let me create an object for the employee class now. Say now please bring your methods logic into your mind, so then you will get automatically the answer. Now what will happen in this case? If I am executing, if I return this line, so that means I am creating an employee object. Creating an object. So, and I said constructors are always executed while creating the objects. Now in this case, total two constructors are there. One is default, one is one parameterizer constructor. Now which one will be executed? So which one will be executed? First one or second one or both. This one will be executed or this one will be executed or both will be executed. So in this case, same methods rule will coming into the picture. What it is? So whenever you executed the program, what Java will do is, I mean internally JVM, it will come here, it will take the right hand side part and it is seeing here how many parameters are there. How many values you pass. I mean 1 or 0, sorry, 0 parameters. So then it will go and verify is there any default constructor added in this class or not with, I mean 0 argument values. Yes, there is one constructor available. So then this constructor will be executed. But this will not be executed. Why? Because it is always expecting a value, integer value. So it is always expecting an integer value, but here you are passing zero value. You are passing zero value. So that's why this constructor will be executed. This constructor will be executed, but not this. So see here, I'll discuss a lot of points in this case itself. Please concentrate. Now see, this is a default constructor. Which one executed? This one is executed. Okay. Now if I want to execute this constructor, what I have to do? Yes. We have to define. So if you want to execute, okay, let me write down that point here. When we want to execute argument parameterized constructors, parameterized constructors, parameterized constructors, then we have to pass argument values to those parameters while creating an object, while creating an object. So that means what I given point here it is when if you want to execute a parameterized constructor or when a parameterized constructor is executed is if you are passing values to those parameters while creating the object. So generally if it is a add method, so you define add method like this. So generally what you will do if integer x comma integer y, so then what you will do, you will while calling the add method, you will make sure two integer values are passing always 10 comma 20. Why you are passing only integer values? As a compiler, as a Java rule point of view, two integer parameters, two values. So that two integer comma integer, integer comma integer. So these rules you know that. Same rule as per, same rules here also. If you want to execute a constructor point of view, so what you have to do is to execute the constructor, for example, employee, yes. To execute the constructor, you need always, you have to create the object. So let's create the object employee E2 equal to new employee. So in this case, right hand side part is more important. Here you are creating the object. Now, in this case, if you want to execute a parameterized constructor, for example, this is what we implemented. So it is expecting how many values? Always one value. That to which value? Integer value. So now if I am passing integer value, some value here, whatever integer value here, yes, in this case, what will happen is immediately Java executor compilation point of view also it will compile associated to this parameter this developer return any constructor or not. If you are not, you added like this, you are creating an object like this but you are not added a constructor, then compiler will say, hey man, when I am compiling your logic, when I am checking your logic, you are passing one value integer value to the employee constructor, but you are not implemented any constructor, like that you will get the compile time errors. Now all compile time issues are resolved. That means everything is good. Then when it comes to execution point of view, what will happen? It will take this. It is in this case what it will do. It will verify. Okay, this guy taking one integer value with respect to employee constructor. So let me go and verify a constructor written or not. So then yes, there is a constructor with respect to integer. Then the 10 value comes here and then this logic will be executed. So that means in this case, this constructor is executing. Now if I want to execute this constructor, what you have to do? You have to pass string value. Now for example, assume I pass a value like this, Dilip. Now here what happened? Again it will verify. A constructor is executed, is there any constructor which is going to take string value? Yes, you already written that. So then this constructor will be executed, but not this one. Similarly, same rules applicable for compiler also. Compiler also checks when you written logic like this, compiler will check this guy written a constructor for the employee class which takes string parameter or not. So assume you are not written. Then what will happen? You will get the compile time error. Now see here what I am doing. We have to pass values to parameters. That is what I said, right? So let's take here employee E2 equal to new employee. Okay. So in this case also again, if you are not passing anything, what will happen? Again, this one only executed. Execution wise, you can call any number of times. That means you are creating one object, second object. So run as Java application. See here, again default constructor executed. Now here I am passing string value. Now what is the problem? Why compiler is scolding us? What it is saying is, hey man, you are passing a value of string. I'm okay for that. But by taking string value, I don't find any constructor. I don't find any constructor which takes string value. So that is what the compile time error. See what it is saying. The constructor employee string is undefined. It is saying like I am not finding any constructor with name called as employee that which takes string parameter. So that is what compiler is saying. The reason is this as we return only integer value accepting integer value but not string value. So that's why it is giving the error. So there are two, what you have to do, even if you want to pass string value, then you can define one more constructor also. So string here. Now see, if I define one more constructor, the error is gone. Now compiler found. Now compiler found one constructor which takes string value. So then this one will be executed. String, for example, name I given and name. So name I added. No, why I am adding, I'll show you the behavior now. String parameter, integer parameter, select it. Now what will happen if you are executing this program? So immediately JVM starts from the main method, it comes here, it found 0. So then immediately it will come here. Based on this constructor will be executed. The entire logic of this constructor will be executed. Okay. Then it will come to the next line. Then again it found here one, you are calling a constructor which is taking one parameter, that to string data type. You given the string value, right? So then what it will do is immediately it will go to the constructor where you define the one parameterized constructor. It should be one, and then that to string, then this will be executed. Why not this? Means this will not execute. Why? You define but you are not called. You are passing string value in this case. That's why this one will be executed now. Now at the same time what will happen? You are passing a value of Dilip, and that Dilip value comes into this variable name called as name. So now ultimately name contains what? Dilip. Now in this case name contains Dilip because you are passing Dilip. So now in this overall constructor level from starting to ending level, the name value becomes always Dilip, but because you are passing the Dilip here. So now what is printed here? It is name Dilip, like that it will print it. So it is going to print the Dilip. Now in this execution point of view, which constructor is executed? This one will be executed. See here, it's a very simple when you are practicing methods and all. See, this is what executed, but not this one. Now, for example, I want to execute this constructor also. What you have to do? One thing is you can pass integer value here or create one more object. Employee E3 equal to employee. So in this case, again default will be called. If I am passing string value, string one will be called. If I am passing integer value, something like that, 1000 or 100, whatever it is. Now what will happen based on the third line? It will identify, as a developer we are passing integer value here. So it will identify any constructor implemented with one integer parameter. Yes, there is a one constructor. That's why compiler is also satisfied. Now for example, assume I am deleting this. Now see, compiler is scolding like, hey man, you are passing a integer value to the constructor, but you define one parameterized constructor which takes only string. Where is the constructor which takes the integer value? So like that, there is no constructor existed which takes only one integer value. So that's why compile time error. Now assume you added that. Now the error is gone. Now what will happen again with respect to these three lines? Yeah. So what will happen again with this with respect to these three lines? So zero parameterized. Whenever you are not passing anything, default constructor will be executed. Now, next, whenever you are passing string value, it is identifying internally string value, string constructor. So this one will be executed now. First one, and then second one, and then in the based on this, it is integer value. So then this one will be executed. So this line will be executed, this one will be executed, and this one will be executed. So like that you can define and you can execute the parameterized constructor. See here, total Dilip 1000 whatever it is executed. It is executed. Okay. So now my next point is, you tell me, I'm just commenting the code intentionally, otherwise compiler will show some error. Okay, assume this is the source code and I did not implemented any default constructor. So I'm not written any default constructor. Now this code is going to compile successfully or not. Now the code is going to compile successfully or not. So compiled or not. So assume, observe line by line. This is entire your source code I given. Even if you want, I can copy paste into here. If I am enabling that, then compiler will help you to answer. So compiler I don't want to show you that errors. Yeah, now this is the logic you are having. Assume this is the question I have asked. Now is there any problem in this code? What is that problem? Our problem is not there. Program is going to be executed successfully or not. Yesterday itself I said this point. Anyone except Deshraj? Compiling is going to success or failure. First of all, compilation. First step is compilation. If compilation is success, then only execution. That point we know that. So that means my first question is it going to be compiled successfully or not? No, it's not going to be compiled successfully. The reason is why? If it is compiling successfully means most of the times program will also execute successfully, right? But the problem here it is, assume it is compiled successfully. Then JVM started execution. Then what will happen? JVM comes here. It will start looking for a default constructor, zero parameterized constructor. Where is the constructor? No, this is not, this is not. This is taking integer, this is taking string. So that means in this class there is no default constructor. But at the same time, yesterday I said one more point. Compiler will not add a default constructor as a developer, at least if you added any type of constructor. So in this case, yes, as a developer, I added one constructor, two constructors. So at least some constructor is presented, then compiler will not add any constructor. So in such case, compiler is going to say to us, hey man, where is the default constructor? Where you written the default constructor? So there is no default constructor. So that means compile time error you will get now. Don't think like compiler is going to add the default constructor for this purpose. No, why? You written already for other purpose, you written already some of the constructors. So as per my rules yesterday, what I say, if you are added something, then compiler will not do anything. So what is that? If you are added something at any type, whether it is a parameterized or whatever it is, then compiler, if you are not added any type, if you are added something, then compiler will not do anything. So in such case, the program is going to give you compile time error. See here. What is that problem? Same problem. See here. The constructor employee is undefined. The constructor employee is undefined. Now if I am removing these two constructors, see the error is shifted here. Why? It's not here. Earlier the error is here. Even there is no default constructor. But now the error is not here, but error shifted to here. Why? Now compiler is saying you are not written any constructor, so that I will take care of the default constructor with the empty body internally, but I will not add any time parameterizer constructors. So yesterday that point I said, even if you remember this rule, compiler will add only default constructor, guys. Compiler will add only default constructor with empty body, but compiler will never ever add any parameterizer constructors internally. So it will add only default constructor with empty body, but that too when you are not added anything. But if you are added something like C class, compiler will never add. So that's what I told you here. So in this case, the compiler is shifted, the compile time error is shifted to here. Why? What compiler is saying is, you are not written any constructor, zero constructors. Okay, fine. Based on that, I will add a default constructor internally like this. So compiler is saying like, I'll take care of default constructor internally like this. Empty body. So that's why no need, I am not worrying about this line. But when it comes to these lines, compiler is saying, I will not add any string parameter constructor. I will not add any integer constructor. As a developer, please add it. Otherwise, remove these lines. So that means there are no constructors executed. There are no constructors defined to create object E2 and E3 by taking string and integer values. So this is how the Java language is designed the constructor topic. Now see, again I added these two. Now error is shifted to here. Now what compiler is saying is, okay, as I said earlier, if you are not added any constructor, then I will add empty constructor. I mean default constructor with empty logic, something empty body, so that I can take care of this line. But this time you are added something, so I don't have permission to add anything, even empty constructor. I mean default constructor with empty logic or whatever it is, I cannot do that. So that's why even it's your responsibility if you want to create object like this without passing any argument values. As a developer, please add a constructor. Why it is asking us to add a default constructor? Because we are already defined parameterized constructor. So that means from this point what you understood. If parameterized constructors are defined in a class and default constructor is missing, that means not added or whatever it is not implemented, instead of missing, not implemented. In such case, compiler will not add any constructor. Compiler will not add any constructor. So that means what is the point? It's so that's why you have to write down the default constructor in this case. So that's why you got the compile time error. Here it is. Now let me add default constructor also. Yeah, see now the error is gone. Now for this you have a constructor, this one. For this you have a constructor, this one. For this also you have a constructor, this one. Okay, now let's see. Can you public employee integer id comma string name comma double salary so like this I return. So now this is how many parameterized constructor? 3 parameter. This is 3 params constructor. Okay, fine. And then let's print one by one value also if you want. So id is id, name is name, salary plus salary. So now I added one more constructor. Yes, there is a difference in the parameters section. If you observe, these are all 1, but this time I written 3. The number of parameters itself difference. So that's why it's a valid constructor. I can write any, that's what I told you. Fine. Now if I want to call this constructor, if I want to call a constructor this one, I want to execute this constructor means create an object. But while creating the object, what you have to do? You have to make sure e4 equal to new passing total 4 values. See, Eclipse is saying your class is designed with implemented with default constructor integer value, string value, id, name and double salary. If you are clicking on this, then Eclipse is going to help you. Eclipse is helping you to write programming quickly. That is what the advantages of editors. Now I'm passing 111 is employee ID. I mean ID point of view and value name as something like Dilip Singh and then followed by salary. I am writing like 1 lakh salary something. Now what will happen in this case? Whenever this line is executed immediately, see id integer string comma double int value string comma double. So can I exchange the order, guys? These are all rules we discussed in the methods level. That's why I'm not going that part again. So can I'm passing 3 values, but can I exchange the order? No, right? So that's what. So integer string double. Such a way you have to pass the value. So let's see here. Now what will happen? Same thing. Now whenever these are all we discuss, right? So when JVM comes here, this one will be executed. When comes here, string one will be executed. When comes here, this one will be executed. When comes here, these 3 values. So that means in this case, again, 111 value is pointed to ID variable. Dilip Singh value pointed to name variable. This 1 lakh value is pointed to salary variable. So that means now ID contains 111, name contains Dilip Singh, salary contains 1 lakh. So now this ID is 100, 111, name is Dilip Singh, salary is 1 lakh, like that. The entire body is going to be executed. So all very, if you remember this one point, then you can understand constructors very easily. This point. And as well as nothing but in vice versa point of view, this one also. So these are all things you have to remember. Now execute it. See now everything. This is a 3 parameterized constructor, ID, name and 100 salary is executed. Okay. So now in this case, this concept will be called as constructor overloading. I said already constructor overloading. So what is the point of constructor overloading is in a class, if you define more than one constructor with different types of parameters, then that concept will be called as constructor overloaded. Overloaded means you know that, right? If you are adding more load, that is called as overload. So same point of view, this is also constructor number 1, constructor number 2, constructor number 3, constructor number 4. You are added more than one. So overloaded. Number of constructors overloaded. So in simple point of view, that's why they given constructor overloading. You are overloaded the constructors. You given 4 constructors. That's why overloaded. So that's why they given naming also as a constructor overloading. So what is a constructor overloading means? Then you have to tell them this point. Constructors, if you define constructors with different types of parameters and different numbers of parameters in the same class, that will be called as a constructor overloading. So more than one constructor with different types of parameters, then it will be called as a constructor overloading. Okay, so this is how you are going to define the constructors in a Java class, or you are going to work with the constructors. But the next point is at what scenarios in real-time applications or in general, at what scenarios we have to define constructors. We have to define constructors. So it looks like method, but only thing is the constructor limitation is you will execute only one time when you created the object like this. If you want to execute this logic one more time without creating object, you cannot execute the constructor. But if it is a method, for example, assume I written a method like this, public void, whatever it is, some method one, whatever it is, how many times I can call this method is n number of times. Without, once you created object, by using that object, you can call that method any number of times. For example, I want to call this method one more time. Yes, yes, yes. You can call any number of times the method wherever you want without creating object every time. You can execute the methods. But if you want to execute a constructor, what is the thing you have to take care is the number of times you are executing the constructor, the number of objects you have to create. But methods not like that. Methods are reusable, re-execute. I mean, methods you can execute wherever you want by passing the values and all. So that means, especially at what scenarios we have to define constructors over the methods. So when comparing with methods, at what scenarios we are going to define the constructors. So in general, generally what we will do is, when we will write constructors is when the requirement is demanding, like when we have to initialize, understand the point, we have to initialize the data for non-static variables, nothing but instance variables. Why I used non-static? It's non-static or instance variables are part of object creation. Those are related to the object family. So variables. So when we have to initialize the data means real values for non-static variables while creating object, then we will write constructors generally. So that means overall point here it is, by the time, summary of above point is, by the time objects is created, if you want to initialize data or real values to variables variables, then we will define constructor. This is the basic okay, this is the thing generally we will follow whenever we are defining the constructor. I mean, at what time generally we will define the constructors is, okay, fine. So generally we will write the constructor to initialize the values for the instance variables, guys. The overall summary is in general like this. That is one way, or you can call it as, you can say like, yeah, Rajesh, you can, yeah, yes, Rajesh. Just spring is started. If you are already having good knowledge of core Java and advanced Java, you can start joining the spring classes also at 9 a.m. Okay, so it's all already started. Just only for introduction classes are completed. It's not a big deal. So you can start attending the spring. But if you don't want to attend this, and if you want to attend after this core Java batch, then you can start after. I mean, after this again, I'll start one more spring batch. Then you can attend. It's up to your comfort. If you're already familiar with core and advanced Java and you want to enhance knowledge in the spring, then you can start attending at 9 and you can reach out me. I'll give you the details. Okay. Yeah. So just only 6 to 7 classes are 7 to 8 classes completed. That that to very basics. What is framework? What is the advantages? Something like that. You just reach out me. I'll share you the details. Based on that, you can take a decision. Okay, fine. So now, by the time object is created, if you want to initialize data, generally we will define the constructors. Or constructors are, when we will define the constructor is when the requirement is demanding, whenever an object is created, immediately some logic has to be executed. Then we will write constructors. We will write constructors. We will write constructors with that logic. So that means on every time an object is created, every time some logic has to be executed. On object creation, some logic has to be executed. Then you will write the constructors if your requirement is demanding. But with my experience, I'm telling you, generally you will not write constructors simply like that for every purpose. Okay, so assume on object creation logic has to be executed, then constructor. After object creation logic has to be executed, then methods. So on object creation something has to be done, then go for the constructor. If after object creation, then write the methods. So in general, I mean, this is the rule we can remember. But when it comes to real time point of view, I'm telling you, this is the point you have to remember. Generally, when you will write down the constructors is to initialize some real values to the instance variables of that class, we will write down the constructors. So to initialize some real values, some data to the instance variables of that specific class, we will write constructors. This is the 95% we will write constructors for this purpose only. So what it is, let's see here now. So you can call methods any number of times, but constructor point of view, you can call the constructors, but every call you have to create a new object. But methods point of view, you don't need to create method every time, sorry, object every time to call the methods. You can call any number of times wherever you want. So please feel the difference, then you will understand. Now let's take the initializing the data point of view, I'm telling you. So let's take product information, something like that. I written a Java class. Now understand here, based on this point, when we have to initialize the data for non-static or instance variables, generally variables I given this thing also. Usually, very rare case we will write non-static variables. 90% will write, sorry, static variables. 90% greater than 90% will write always non-static variables only or instance variables. Okay, so let's do one thing. Okay. So this is the class. Let's see here what I'm writing. Integer ID string product name. Okay, so I'll write proper meaningful names. Product ID, product name, and then double price, something. You written like this. Maybe you can add public also, no problem. Okay, so total 3 variables or more than that. Let's assume like that. Now, my requirement is when I created an object for the class product information, immediately product details should be assigned, should be initialized. So that is what my requirement point of view. What you have to do. Product detail should be initialized. So that means whenever I'm creating the product object, immediately details should be assigned to the instance variables. So what? So then what you have to do? If I created product 1, then by the time the product ID, assume 100 or whatever it is, and then product name is iPhone 16, and then followed by comma, price point of view, I'll give like 1 lakh, something like that. So this is what I give. Now similarly, if I created one more product, nothing but object, immediately that product should have different data, something like 150 and iPhone 16 Pro, and then some its cost also 1,29,000, something like that. I given the value. Similarly, product 3, product 4. So on every object creation, different types of data should be allocated to instance variables for those respective objects. This is what your requirement. This is what as an analysis I given to you. So if you are taking a old approach calling as, for example, let's write like this main method. So there are two approaches. What is that? Product P1 equal to new product information. So in this case, what's happening? Line number 17 point of view, you are creating an object called as P1 for the product class. Okay, cool. So what will happen based on this rule? I said one rule is there. Whenever you create an object, instance variables will be initialized with the default values. So ID equal to 0, name equal to null, and then price equal to 0, 0.0. So this is what with respect to P1. And then if you are making logic like P1 dot product ID equal to 100 and P1 dot product name equal to something like iPhone 16, then P1 dot price equal to 1 lakh. If you are calling logic like this, then what will happen? Then a 0 value will be replaced with 100. Name will be replaced with iPhone 16. Price will be replaced with 1 lakh. But here the problem here it is, my requirement is what? When I created an object on, immediately the data should be initialized. But here what happened? At line number 17 level, you have created the object, but data is not initialized. After line number 17, that means after object creation, you are updating the data. You are updating the data. But my point is, while creating object itself, data should be initialized. But here in this case, what's happening? If you are not writing the constructor, ultimately you are achieving the final result. Okay, that's I'm not saying that, but my point is some reason I don't want to write all this logic, extra logic. So I'll create hundreds of objects, thousands of products. So every time I cannot write logic like individually set id, setting name, setting price after object creation. So this entire overall thing, object creation plus initialization. So in this case, what you did, creation as a step number 1, initialization as a other steps. But I'm telling you, like, don't do all these things as a different steps point of view. Make sure creation and initialization both in same place, both in this single call. Write logic like that. So then you have to implement constructor. So then see here, now I'm writing a constructor for this product information public, and what I said, total 3 values, right? Let's take integer, id, string, name, comma, double, price or value, whatever it is, amount or whatever it is. Okay, cool. So now see here, what I am going to do, product id equal to id. Name equal, sorry, product name equal to initialization. The value whatever I am passing with respect to this, I am writing like this, name and then amount, price equal to amount, something like that I written. Now what will happen? Whenever I'm passing values from here like this, so why the compile time error is coming? Because this time you are not added any default constructor. So only parameterized constructor. So that's the reason. 100 is an integer value. iPhone 16 is a string value. I'll pass based on that. See, now what will happen? Within line number 1 itself, what is going to happen? Object creation as well as initialization. So in this case, the advantage is what? Okay, so this is what logic you written, right? So based on this, what will happen immediately is in the JVM memory level, understand the points. These are all very, 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 very important to understand the other Spring frameworks going further. So going further, we will write constructors in so many places, especially this scenario only. So what will happen in this point of view? P1 object is created in the JVM memory. Okay, fine. Then immediately P1, and then in this case, what you are doing is you are creating the object. While creating the object, you give a name P1. So it will create. And immediately 100 value pointed to ID, name value pointed to iPhone 6. I mean, this iPhone 16. This is pointed to this variable. Now, immediately what will happen whenever this right hand side is executed, it will enter inside the constructor. It found the constructor, it will. Now, what you are doing, as per our rule, what I said earlier, all instance variables will be initialized with the default values. But this case, what will happen in the constructor level? You are making product ID equal to ID, but ID is having what value? 100. So 100, here it is iPhone 16, and then 1 lakh value you are having, right? So these are all values. Now what will happen? ID 100. So that means product ID equal to 100. Similarly, product name, I'm not writing complete variable names. So what you are assigning? Name. So that means iPhone 16, and then you are assigning price equal to amount. So that means price equal to 1 lakh, whatever the value you are passing. So that means by the time P1 object is created, see, the data is also initialized. The data is also initialized. Now assume if I added one more line below this, P2 equal to new product information of, okay, 150 iPhone Pro, iPhone 16 Pro, comma 1,29,099,000, something like that. What will happen? Again, when it comes to here, again it will go to the same constructor, it will start executing. So that means it will start creating one more object called as P2. And then again, ID equal to 150, and then name equal to product name equal to 16 Pro, and price equal to 1,29,099, something like that, whatever the value. So that means in this case, what's happening? You are initializing the data on object creation itself. On object creation itself. So this is the advantage of the constructors. So in this case, generally people will write down the constructors, but not in any other cases, most of the times, to initialize the instance variables. If you don't have a constructors topic, what is the, I mean, if you don't have a constructor and if you want to execute same behavior, what is going to happen? So you are not written the constructor, then you cannot create object like this. Then what you have to do? P1 dot ID, product ID equal to 100. So you see how much logic you are writing. P2 dot product, sorry, P1 dot name, product name equal to something like iPhone 16, iPhone 16, and then P1 dot price, P1 dot price equal to something, some price you are giving, 1 lakh, something like 00. So if you are created only one object, that's fine. But now I'm asking create one more object. Now what will happen? You will create one more object, P2. Then P2 dot product ID, P2 dot product name, P2 dot price. So then you will give like 150, and then this is iPhone 16 Pro, and then this is 1,29,000, something like that. Now this is these many lines of logic you are writing, and then this is the behavior you are achieving finally. But with this also you are achieving same thing. At the single step you are making this. Now, if I am asking create 100 products like this, then how much logic you are writing? See here. So 100 into 1, 2, 3, 4 lines equal to 400 lines of logic. 100 products. But if I added constructor topic, if I added constructor point of view, the number of lines, see how many lines you will write if I added a constructor to achieve the same result at the end. So that's what I'm telling you. Don't think always like one or two point of view, one or two objects point of view. Think always in a perspective like larger objects, large volume of objects, nothing like 10,000 product, 1 lakh products, 1 lakh objects, 2 lakh objects like that. Yes, in real time that will be like that. Now, if I have a constructor point of view, then how many lines? 100 lines means 100 objects means yes, you are writing only 100 lines of logic. 2, 3, 4, product 2 is ready, product 3 is ready, product 4 is ready like that. Product 2, product 3, product 4. So 150 iPhone 16 Pro, and then I'm writing 1,29,000, something like whatever it is. Similarly, product 3 iPhone 16 Pro Max, and then this is 1,40,000, something like that. And then I product 4 iPhone 16, something like mini, whatever it is, special edition, whatever it is. And then this price is only 99,000, something like that. So now this is how you written the things. Now what happened within 4 lines? I mean, you created the object, you're initializing the values for all these variables. Now sys out of print one by one if you want. P1 dot ID plus, I'm printing one by one. Really the values are initialized or not. I am just showing you that. Comma, product price, I'll write, product name, I'll write. Sorry, P1 dot product name slash comma, and then P1 dot price. Okay, so it's all product 1 information. Similarly, product 2, product 3, I'm printing. Really the values are initialized internally or not. Let's see here. P1, P2, P, yeah, P4. You added total 4 products. P4 product ID, P4 product name, P4 product price. Okay, so let's execute now. See what happened is iPhone 16, iPhone 16 Pro, iPhone 16 Pro Max, everything is internally initialized for every object level. So based on this, P1, P2, P3, P4, P4, like that. So this is the purpose. Generally, people will write down the constructors always in real-time applications for initializing the values to the instance variables. See, still we have to enhance the way you are writing the constructor. So for that, you have to define some, I mean, some other concepts. That's why I taken some differentiation, but in real time standards point of view, still you have to define some other approach. There will be some concept called as this variable and all. So at that time, once you are reaching to that concepts, then you will understand how to write proper constructors. So there is some way we will understand Pojo classes point of view and all, then I will explain again. how exactly we will write in the real-time class applications level. But time being, just please understand all these importances, understand how you are defining the constructor. Now, for example, your requirement is demanding like this. By the time object is created, okay, only ID value should be initialized. Only ID value has to be initialized. Then what you have to do? So your requirement, new requirement came with respect to product only. He was saying like, sometimes I have only product ID value. I don't have any other value. So I want to initialize only ID value. What I have to do? Every time only ID value has to be initialized. So that means, are you going to change this constructor? Means no need. Just add one more constructor. So based on the ID value, what you have to do? Take only ID value. That's all. Now you define one constructor with one parameter. So now, for example, if I created product information P5 equal to new. Now product 5 is having only ID value, not other values. So what I have to choose, first one or second one? First one. So I'll pass something like 200, whatever it is. I have only ID value 222, something like that. Yes. Now print the pre5 values. P5 data. So what you will see, product ID 222, product name null, product price 0.0. So because you don't have this data as of now. So see here, product 5 point of view, null 0.0. Now my requirement is demanding in the same class. I have a I should have a logic. Sometimes I don't have any data of product. So once I am up creating an object, then only I will initialize the data to that product object. So that means by default empty value should be there. Default value should be there. Then what you have to do? So in this itself, no data should be initialized. So that means you are making this product information class all the ways ready. When you are having three values, passing three values at a time, this constructor. When you are having ID value, this constructor. And when you don't have any value, then also you have to create the product object. Then what you have to do? Write a default constructor. So this is how real-time applications wise we will write down the constructors. Now what I'm doing? No values, nothing. Empty constructor. So now what will happen if I created an object product 6 with no data passing? Yes, object will be created but empty with the default values. Product 6. So like that you can make one class is ready to accept or initialize any kind of at any point of time, any kind of at any point of time, any number of variables initialized. You can define multiple constructors. Don't initialize anything, default. One or two, then define only one or two. If you want to define all parameters, yes, you can define all those. So see here, 0 null null, 22 null null, all the values. Now you can say one more point also, sir, why we have to write, if you are already having 3 here, so in this case, why we have to write one parameterized constructor? So instead of that, I'll pass the value like null comma 0.0. It's okay. That is also valid solution. But the point is, how many objects? Assume you're preparing 100,000 objects and 1000 objects are having only product ID, not other values. So that means every time manually you're giving null 0.0, null 0.0. So it's a somewhat right. So that's why we are making our class is ready. Something like if it is having all the values, call this constructor. If it is having only ID value, call this constructor. If it is having only don't have any values, call this constructor. Like that you are making the logic. So it's up to your choice. Okay, so this is all about the constructors. With this, we are done with the constructors. We understood the advantages, disadvantages. There are okay. So and real usage of constructors also, and we understood difference between constructors and methods also. So because methods are called any point of time, but constructors are all called only while executing the object, and that two constructor names or class names, method names are anything. Constructors will don't have any return type, methods will have return type. So these are all details we discussed as part of the constructors. So with this, we are done with the constructors topic. Okay. So let's connect on tomorrow. I think probably tomorrow I'll start arrays topic. I'll start arrays. Yeah, thank you, Veena. Okay, so let's connect tomorrow and let's discuss the arrays topic tomorrow. So what is an arrays? And then I'll give some assignments with respect to arrays point of view also. So today you can take assignment something like this. You can create something like order class and whatever it is, or your name, your student information, whatever it is. Yeah, you can take your biodata information only. Assignment is maybe with respect to constructor point of view. Write a biodata class, that means your own biodata, and pass values only via constructors. Pass values, create your friends' biodatas. Biodata Dilip, biodata Suresh, biodata Naresh, like that. You can create different objects by passing values, pass values via constructors. Pass via values via constructors. Don't call like object name dot variable name. Pass values via directly constructors. So that means you have to define number of constructors. So like for example, your class name is biodata. So biodata, then integer, your friend name, name, and followed by integer age, followed by something like whatever it is, mobile number, his mobile number. That means long mobile, like that. So assume you want to make sure friend name and mobile number is mandatory. You need to maintain always. Then two constructors, two parameterized constructor. So sometimes you are having data of age also. So then integer age. Sorry, here string int, not int. So define one more constructor. You don't have any information of your friend. So define empty constructor. Then after that you can add his information. Empty constructor. So like that you can make a lot of assignments on your own. And while testing also, while writing also, you can also test yourself like if you are giving default constructor two times, what is happening? Note down that error. If you are giving same parameterizer constructor two times, you define what is compile time error it is saying. So like that, please test all these things. Okay, so let's connect on tomorrow and we'll discuss arrays. Even in arrays also, I'll use constructor topic with respect to object creations point of view. That's why I discussed constructors first and then arrays. So tomorrow we'll see arrays. So as part of arrays, I will use again. I'm telling you one more time. Loops is the most important concept. We will use loops extensively in the arrays topic. So that's why please revise your knowledge of for loop, while loop, do while loop, because tomorrow when you are discussing arrays, we will use loops only. Okay. So just revise your knowledge of loops. Thanks.